Welcome to the Rant Live. Welcome to the Rant, everybody. I'm Jon Strong with my co-host Evan Altman. Both of us from Bears Insider today. And you guys, the people on the podcast didn't see it because we actually do this show as a live webcast first, and then we download it as a podcast. But we actually had the intro was now Bears. It's more Bears branded. It used to just be Cubs stuff, but now it's Bears. So I'm impressed.
We grew up from Cubs to Bears, and actually had the right team.
Which is good. So I feel good about that. It takes a long time to figure out this stuff. My background is not in design or podcasting or webcasting or anything. So it's like I'm just amazed that we got this far, to be honest with you.
It is kind of neat though that this stuff has come to the point where it's not like 100% intuitive, but it's not like back in the day when you had to know how to code if you wanted to have a website. You know what I mean? You had to be able to program from the ground up, and now it's just kind of I'll just push this button and kind of loop these things in. You have to. There are varying levels of efficacy, I think, with that, but it's certainly a lot different from back in the day when this stuff all started.
Yeah, and it's better for us because it makes it a little easier to do, although it's still difficult. And better for everybody else that's got to consume the content that we're creating here.
I love that you said that has to that they have to kind of consume the content. Everybody that's got.
I assume that's why they're consuming it.
Yeah, well, I suppose so.
They're being forced.
It's like a school lunch or something. You know what I mean? Like back in the day, at least. Although I will say this: the one nice thing about all this mess with the stuff. My kids are in person school, but school breakfast is free now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, which is like.
Do you go for that?
I should. I kind of wish I did. And I always forget about it because they sent this out it's free for every student. Excuse me, which is awesome. And I would like it to be that way all the time. Although, again, we can afford to pay for the breakfast or whatever, but it's so much nicer because a lot of times, my son and I'm more in favor. I don't usually eat big breakfast, but I like the little, the protein bars or the cookies or whatever. Actually, those complete cookies, you ever get those? They're awesome. And they're plant-based, which is kind of weird, but they taste really, really good. There's a chocolate chip, a double chocolate, and the snickerdoodle one, which is great, except that it's covered in all the powdery crap, and then
I'm not a powdery crap type of person.
Yeah, and it doesn't make for good eating in the car because you just make a giant mess, which I learned the hard way.
You get up and the imprint of where you were sitting, your legs and everything,
just like cinnamon and shit. An
outline.
No, it looks like I went to the beach. Essentially, which but I didn't. I drove 5 hours to pick up beer. But I guess
and you sustained yourself on bars and bars alone
because right yeah, that's basically what it is now. Is I just have a stockpile of complete cookies, but he doesn't need to eat them. I'm like, hey dude, you gotta get up, you gotta go eat breakfast. He's I'll just eat at school. I'm like, oh, this is the greatest. So yeah, it saves me 15 minutes a day, and he doesn't eat my food. So
nice. Excellent.
Anyway,
well, it sounds like things are, this week, let's just, without getting right into the Bears, because, there's not a lot of positives to talk about there. This was a good weekend, right? Joe Biden was announced that he won the presidency of the United States, barring, some mad kind of legal lawsuit flurry that we're going to see from the incumbent. So that was good. And it was positive. Any other positive things from your weekend?
Yeah, a few actually. Saturday was fantastic. I dropped my son off at basketball practice. And then I drove immediately to Munster, Indiana, which is about 2.5 hours north, for Dark Lord Day, which is not an actual, that's at Three Floyds. It used to be a big concert and a metal concert, and you'd have the special release of their Dark Lord Russian Imperial Stout. And so they couldn't have it because of the gathering, but they were still selling the stuff. So a couple months ago, I think I made my order, and it's for 4 bottles of Dark Lord, and then you get an extra. The one I wanted was aged in 2 years in bourbon barrels and had vanilla and cacao and stuff like that in there.
Ooh, sounds good.
Yeah. So the one I got has is it like Mexican cinnamon and pink peppercorns is kind of it's called chemtrail mix.
Okay. That sounds good.
However, and it is not cheap, right? 5 bottles of this stuff. Excuse me, not cheap. And I drove, round trip 5 hours to go get it. And literally I was there for a minute and a half. You pull in, you show them your order number and your driver's license through your window. You pop your trunk, they drop a bag in there, and you drive off. So literally a minute and a half I spent on the property to drive 5 hours, which is kind of dumb. But and we'll see what happens with the variant bottle that I got, because I looked immediately to see what these things are going for on beer trading sites. And the price that I saw as of yesterday was $325.
Wow.
And
what did you pay? What was it, like $25?
I paid $170 total for 5 bottles.
Okay.
The variant is the one that's really expensive. I mean, the Dark Lord bottles are probably going for 50 or more. So I mean, if you look at it in terms of value, I mean, I would have, but chances are pretty good I'm going to end up drinking the stuff on my own, just because I think I've talked about it, maybe not on this pod, but on the other ones, how I feel like the experience value, because like $320 is not going to change my life, right? And I'm not going to get to keep $320. Like, I'm still going to have to ship it to whomever or trade it for something. So excuse me, I don't know what I did. I swallowed a bug or something, but
the dangers of
webcasting. The value is really only there if you sell it. And if I did, $320, that's cool. I could get some cool stuff with that. But again, I'm more of an experienced person, so it'd be kind of cool to once this stuff all blows over, to be able to share that with friends or whatever.
So when you save it, are you a saver of beers or are you a drinker of beers?
Well, both. I mean, it's
primarily
not good if you don't drink it. But I mean, I have probably, as I look over to my left here, I mean, I've got like probably 20 different barrel aged, most of them kind of the wax dipped deals. I mean, I've got several $100s worth of barrel aged beers sitting over here. But it's only any good if you drink it. And I think the problem with this whole quarantine thing is I've been drinking more of them than probably I would if it were a more social kind of a thing, because in those cases, generally you're having more beer, you're buying
like
beers
with people,
greater volume. Yeah.
Remember those days when you actually hung out with people?
Yeah, it was kind of weird. So, but I think what's going to happen, and that was even during the summer, and I usually calm down on the heavier stuff, the barrel stuff during summer, because it's summer, right? And so once it starts getting colder, then you sort of feel more like, the other day it's cool and I had a fire and I'm like, oh, I'm going to sit out here and drink one of these. So we'll see. It's a little bit of both, but yeah, there's probably more to it. I mean, I've got some. I don't think I have any more Kentucky breakfast stout. I've definitely got some Canadian breakfast stout, although they've mass produced that pretty heavily. Some worldwide stout from Dogfish Head that I know is super expensive to buy in a 4-pack, relatively speaking. So some of that's over there. I mean, I've got some cool ones, but we'll see. I've got some ranging back to 2015, 2017. I think maybe as far back as 2013. I might even have a Fremont 2013 B-bomb.
Yeah, those.
Yeah, eventually I will. Some of that stuff is like, what are you going to do?
Those barrel-aged beers are awesome when it gets cold. It's actually cold here now. You can see I have like a long sleeve sweatshirt type thing on. I live in Phoenix, for those who aren't aware, and it is it's a little chilly. I think it's 60 right now. Let's see, which for us it's so
like
cold.
75 here right now. It is hot now here. It's 75.
61 here right now. 61. I'm going to be starting a fire in the fireplace. But I'll tell you what you and our friend Tommy have done to me is you guys got me hooked on the hazy IPAs. So I spent about a month and a half in Chicago at Tommy's place. Tommy has an Airbnb that I stayed in, and Evan came up for a few days there. And it's just he's a really dedicated hazy kind of this New England style double IPA drinker. And something I never knew was that the hazies, these double IPAs in Chicago, are very unique, and they're unlike any. And I've tried here in Phoenix to buy double IPAs, and they're really super fruity, like a little too fruity for me, not quite as hazy. It's just different, and so I'm just totally hooked on the Chicago ones. Luckily, I can get a few hazies here from Chicago. So I'm subsisting on that while I can, but I've been ruined. My taste buds have been ruined. I must have Chicago double IPAs.
Yeah, I think the problem, the good and the bad, of course, you get a brewery like Hop Butcher, and
They're so good.
Yeah, and they've kind of changed the game in that front. It's not like Double Nickel, the ripe from Double Nickel out of New Jersey is insane. I mean, just that's probably the most extreme example of the style, and I love it, but they don't distribute here. And I can get Maplewood out of Chicago down here. And they were kind of on the cusp, I think, with their Son of Juice and some other ones. Dripping Citra is another. But I've found, again, my palates, and I'm in the same boat with you. But Hop Butcher has just changed the game to such an extent. I think pushed the bar up so high,
and that's only Chicago,
right?
You're not getting that anywhere else.
Yeah, they're not distributing anywhere. I mean, unless you get lucky, and I don't think I've ever seen them on Tavor. I know I've seen Hubbard's Cave. I think Pipeworks has had some stuff on there in the past. So
they're good. Pipeworks is good.
Yeah, Pipeworks has some good. Ninja versus Unicorn versus Haze is excellent.
That is good.
And Corridor used to be a lot better. I know they've changed brewers.
Well, I'm getting Half Acre. That's all I can find here.
Yeah,
a Half Acre. I'm getting Alive in Its Jaws. And then there's another one that I've been getting. And it's not as good as Hop Butcher, but it's better than those California style double IPAs.
Does Revolution distribute down there? Because Rev does some decent. They have was it Hazy Hero? They have their Hero series. It started with Anti-Hero IPA, and then they'll do various differentiations of that. But Hazy Hero is decent. My problem with it is, like anything else, right? You get a craze, you get a fad, and it feels like if we're sticking with the football theme of like back when the Wildcat offense and when the Dolphins were running that and they had who was it, Cadillac Williams, and
back when it used to work.
Yeah, for momentarily for like one team, and then there's this thought like, oh, did they start so then other teams were trying to implement that, or you look at like the RPO, right, run pass option, and you look at the spread offense, and so it started like, oh, there's this spread and they're running in college, and it was like, that'll never work in the pros, and then essentially those things sort of come together. But if a team tries to adopt it and sort of the wrong, like the team that starts with something like that is always the one that does it best, and everybody else tries to copy it. And sometimes they make which is to say that this style started to boom, 2-3 years ago on the NEIPAs, and then you'll have all these derivations that'll call themselves juicy or fruity, or not fruity, but hazy. Juicy and hazy are like the two that they'll throw on there, and then I'll pour one. I'm like, this is completely clear.
Yeah,
what are you talking about?
It's hazy because it's in an ice cold glass. Like,
yeah,
like hazy. Like I want to be able to stick my finger in it and not see my finger.
Yeah, no, I want it. It should look like orange juice. It really should. I mean, and I know that sounds gross to a lot of people who don't like that style, and I totally understand it. But if you're going to do it, you need to do it. And I guess maybe that does take us back around to the Bears, which is to say that they have a coach who was purported to be an offensive genius. He was supposed to have come here with this Andy Reid style of offense. Like, oh, this is an Andy Reid coaching tree. And I'm like, that's a load of shit, because there's nothing I've ever seen outside of like one drive here and there that resembles in any way, shape, or form anything Andy Reid is doing and anything that Doug Peterson was doing, although the Eagles suck now. So, but it's kind of embarrassing, and I feel like we've been sold this bill of goods because Nagy's supposed to be the quarterback whisperer, and it's like, no, like that's a name that apparently he was given, but it sure doesn't taste like it.
Well, we managed to avoid talking about the Bears for 14 minutes. So for that, I'm proud, even though this is a Bears
podcast. That's like, how long can we go without actually transitioning to this shitty team?
The Bears did lose their third straight game. And, listen, when the Bears were 5-1, a lot of pundits were out there saying, this team is worse than, way worse than that. They're the worst 5-1 team. They're the worst 5-2 team. They're the worst 5-3 team, and now I'm hearing they're the worst 5-4 team. So, or worst team with a winning record. I haven't gone down the list of NFL teams with winning records to really validate that, but I believe it. And it was really, it's just, it's kind of numbing. It really just, it's one of those things where you sit there and you're watching, you want to be excited, and you are. I'm excited for the game. And as it unfolds, I mean, particularly for me, the moment that, my heart was ripped out of my chest on Sunday was in the first drive. I mean, the Bears got into the Titans field, into the field, and it was looking good. And boy, it was 4th down and 1, and they go for it on, I think they were on the 34-yard line, instead of kicking a field goal with the guy, Cairo Santos, who's been 11 for 11 since week 3. I've got numbers written down all over here because I've been trying to put together a post this morning. I rewatched the entire first half of the game, fast forwarding through the commercials and whatnot, but just to try to see if I could figure things out. I mean, I've looked at all these numbers, and I mean, at the end of the day, it's just like, that's the one thing. That's the first thing I don't understand. There's a whole bunch of stuff we can talk about in the game, but the first thing I don't understand about Matt Nagy is, hey, listen, you've got the 28th ranked offense in the NFL. And if you take away what they've done in the fourth quarter, which the points they've been averaging a little over 10 points in the fourth quarter per game. But the reason is because they're down they're down by so much that they're playing catch up in the fourth quarter, and the defenses are playing soft, giving them all the underneath stuff. So they're able to score more points, and they have scored more points. And a couple times they've actually won those games. But if you take that fourth quarter away, they're the worst offense by far in the NFL. So when you get a chance to kick a field goal on your opening drive, I'm asking you, Evan, to explain to me why you think Matt Nagy would not take 3 points on the first drive.
The only thing that I can come up with, and so I will say this as a steadfast believer in the fact that you go for it on 4th and 1. If you're anywhere outside of completely negative territory, go for it, because any NFL team should be able to get that yard. Should.
50,
even
50.
with the jet sweep to Cordero Patterson, you should be able to get it. However, we are talking about a team that had a crappy offensive line, even when they were all healthy, that was missing just about every, coming into the season. What did they have? Like one starter still, if any, that they were operating with. And so they're not very good at running the ball in the first place. They're definitely not good at passing, but like they're so bad at all those things. But I kind of think you go for it just the same, because that, again, that's what you do. You should be able to get that yard. You push that in there, and now you've established yourself. You show that you've got faith in the offense to get that yard, and you don't want to take that away right away and say, hey, we don't even trust you guys to get a yard down here deep in their territory, and so we're going to kick. And then what if you miss the kick? What is that, 52 yards? Again, now you've given the other team 8 more yards of field position. And so I agree with the decision to go for it. The problem is that even in those situations, as much as I disagree with most of what Matt Nagy has done, there's also the matter of their poor execution. And so, like, even when the play call is right, that I agree with it, or I think it was good, they have such a failure to execute. And so there's a problem both ways. But, I do think, again, I think you go for it there, because that is a way to really, again, you've already at very least flipped the field position. You put yourself in almost guaranteed position to get a field goal from that point, and it keeps the offense ideally establishing a better rhythm and having that trust early for that momentum. But obviously it did not work out.
I look at it a little bit differently. I'm a positive negative guy, right? I look at, all right, anytime it's 4th down, and I know the numbers kind of favor a 4th and 1 situation. I think NFL, across the NFL, it's about 55% that you're successful on 4th and 1, but that's a general number, right? And that doesn't take into consideration a number of different things, such as the situation, the team that's executing it, and kind of what this offense has the ability to do. And on the first drive, I think what you've done there is you gave the momentum right to the Tennessee Titans instead of having the momentum, at least getting some points on the board, which they didn't score until the fourth quarter. And really the only reason they scored is because, the defense was playing soft. And so it's just obviously hindsight's 2020 type thing. It's easy to look and say, oh, that was a bad call. But I thought at the moment it was a bad call. I really felt I'm a firm believer in, if you've got an offense that's basically the worst offense in the NFL, you take points when you can get them. I think if you're the Kansas City Chiefs and you're in that same situation, yeah, of course you go for it, because you're going to get chances to score more in the game. With the worst offense in the league, you're just not going to get chances. And this because you've played, a number of games and you've seen the numbers. So, and then not only did they do that, but then they lined up to try to do it again in the third quarter. Again, first drive coming out of the half, kind of those first drives coming out, to start the half. The first half and the second half are always kind of momentum type drives. First half coming out again, they line up to go for it on fourth down from, I think it was about the same place, 35-yard line or something, like 31-yard line. And now this time they jumped and had a false start, and then they lined up to go for it again, and they jumped again, I think, and they had to punt the ball. And that just turned into just a mess. It's just, there's no discipline. There's no acceptance of the reality of what this team is and what they can and cannot do. I just think Matt Nagy, I like Matt Nagy as a head coach. I think he understands the game well, but he's doing a terrible job on the offensive play calls, which is clear. And so it's like, what do you do? How do you fix this? I mean, short of firing Matt Nagy, which to me, I think is a mistake, you want him there. What do you do to fix this?
No, at this point, I still am in favor of firing him. I'm in favor of firing him and Ryan Pace, and they need to get rid of Ted Phillips. I mean, nothing really matters to the fish rots from the head down. But he's got to go.
Yeah, I agree.
But the issue that I've got, and I do think Nagy has a respect of his players. I've said this before. I agree that he's a good manager of people. His game management, however, whether it be the clock or the play calling, leaves a whole lot to be desired. And I don't know if that's an ego thing. We've talked about that a few times. And he always says, we've discussed this. And I feel like it's more like, I've discussed this with my guys and I've told them that I'm going to keep doing this. But
exactly.
But it doesn't really, something is wrong. Okay. When the only 7 points they've scored in the third quarter all season. So we've got 9 games. They've scored once. That was against the Panthers on a play where the Panthers missed a field goal. I think it was a 54-yarder, so right in the same neighborhood as what the Bears could have gone for. So the Bears get a short field as a result. And they were able to drive. And they barely made it in. There was only a minute and a half left in the third, I think a minute 36 in that third quarter against the Panthers in week 6. When they, their last win, right? And so that's the only time they have scored at all in the third quarter. And to me, that's an even bigger indictment. It's bad enough to be terrible in the first quarter. Like that's bad. But you can scheme and game plan for a team, and they're obviously scheming and game planning for you, and you're seeing different things so maybe they came out and they had a different look than what you had expected for whatever reason, and you kind of start a little slow, you're feeling your way out. But you've seen what they can offer. You've seen them, and you've seen what they're doing and how they're scheming against you. And while they can make adjustments, the Bears seem utterly inept and incapable of making adjustments to the other team either way. And it's unacceptable. It's complete. I mean, to me, that's the greatest indictment of Nagy, is that
I agree.
His situational game management is just, it leaves a lot to be desired, because if you can't come out and even attempt, not even attempt, I mean, they've gotten close, right? But 7 points in the third quarter in 9 games, right? Like that's not even a point a game that you're averaging. That's not, and then by that point, to your, I keep saying, I'm repeating myself, but in different ways. To your point, on that point, and the points that they don't score, it happens in the fourth quarter. But if you've dug yourself so much of a hole by not scoring in the third, it doesn't matter. And I know they've been able to come back a couple times. That's based largely on the other team's ineptitude. I mean, the Falcons just absolutely crapping the bed, and the Lions crapping the bed. And then, interestingly enough, those two teams tried to crap the bed against one another. The Lions came back on the Falcons. But were it not for other teams either being dumber than the Bears at times on defense and the Bears are on offense, or just sitting back and being like, wow, we got a 3-touchdown lead. Who cares? Go ahead and score a couple times. They wouldn't do anything. And the fourth quarter would look far worse. So if it wasn't for being so terrible in the first 3 quarters that the other teams feel bad for you in the fourth, the offense would look that much worse. And that's what's scary to me, is that when other teams actually try, the Bears simply cannot do anything. And again, let's be very, very clear. The offensive line is terrible and should not be expected. I mean, there's very few people that could do much with that and behind it. So I do want to put that out there. But as we've said, and as other people have noted, the feel and the flow of the offense in general, the time it takes to get plays in, to get things executed, the lack of execution on just the simplest things, with being able to not jump early, right? Not pick up dumb penalties, not drop easy passes, make a block here. It's just things do not get executed. And if you lack a lot of dynamism, if you will, in the play calling, and then you can't even execute on the plays you do call, you're never going to get anything done. And that's on the head coach. That's right. There's no place else to go with that. They already fired last year. They fired the OC. They fired the tight ends coach. They fired the O-line coach. They fired the assistant special teams coach. There's no place else to lay the blame at this point.
There's not.
All the guys you had, but if you still call the plays, you're still responsible for it. So,
and the crazy part about this season is, I mean, like, the defense looked freaking good yesterday. They looked really, really good. And it's just one of those things where it's like, wow, I mean, it's such a dichotomy looking at the offense versus the defense and trying to just like comprehend that that both sides of the ball are actually the same team. And it's just, it just doesn't make sense. And the big difference is you've got Matt Nagy's the offensive coordinator. Chuck Pagano is the defensive coordinator. Matt Nagy is not doing anything on the defensive side of the ball. All he's doing is managing the personnel and managing the coaches, which is exactly what he needs to be doing on the offensive side of the ball. And I'm not saying that that's going to fix everything, because as you mentioned, the offensive line, obviously it's a mess. But Nick Foles threw for 335 yards yesterday. Tannehill threw for 158. I mean,
but how many of those yards were in garbage time?
Yeah, in the fourth quarter.
Did he pick up? Yeah, how much did he pad? Well, and I do again, and I do want to note, right? Pagano's working with a much deeper and more diverse skill set of players. Like you stack up, and if you rate them and the talent level that's on the defensive side of the ball, which again, now that goes back to Ryan Pace, because we've all known that. We've all known this for years. This isn't something new. I mean, once they trade for Khalil Mack and they get some guys in there, and Akeem Hicks turns into a stud, and you've added some players around that, they seem to be fairly adept at identifying and acquiring talented defensive players. The same cannot be said for the offensive side of the ball, where it feels like what the Cubs are going to do in free agency, not to bleed over too much, but kind of just picking up guys and hoping that, like, all right, well, maybe this dude will bounce back.
Taking a flyer.
Maybe he'll get it done. Yeah, and then, you spend a ton of money on Jimmy Graham, which, while he's been good, again, it's not, you could have saved a ton of money for a tight end who could be just as effective in this offense. And that's not hindsight. I was pissed off about it when it happened. So we can go back there, but it's so silly that you look at both sides, and these are preventable things, right? There are moves they could have made. There are things they could have done to have bolstered that offensive unit, and they didn't. And I don't think Ryan Pace is a good judge of offensive talent at all. And that's, I mean, that's not just, I'm not just saying that, it's been the case. It's been proven out. So what's the point? And again, there's some systemic failure. That said, if the offense just plays to a level of kind of mediocrity instead of being really, really bad, if they're just kind of medium bad, then you're not putting the defense in bad positions all the time. You're actually, you're moving the ball a little bit. You're putting the other team in poor field position more frequently, even if it's just 10 or 15 yards here and there. That can change the tenor of the game. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that over the last few games. So
score points when you get a chance. Just score points when you get a chance. The Bears have scored 18 touchdowns this year. 10 of them, which would be about 56%, have come in the fourth quarter. Just understand that 55% of your touchdowns, I won't say offense because field goals are different, has come in the fourth quarter when you've been trailing in damn near every game. I'm gonna have to go back and look. I'm not sure if there have been many games where this season where the Bears, it may be one, actually have a lead going into the fourth quarter. And so it's just that type of, and so to me, that's a huge indictment on Matt Nagy. There's a couple things. Is all your points, basically a big chunk of your points, over half, are coming in the fourth quarter when you're down and defenses are playing soft. The next thing is coming out of the half into the third quarter, you are the worst team in the NFL in the third quarter in scoring. Those things, I mean, when you should be making adjustments, what's happening is that the other teams are coming out. They're going into the half, both teams, and your opponent comes out and makes adjustments that you cannot figure out. And that cause you to get down by so much going into the fourth quarter that they then play soft defense and allow you to score points. I mean, if it wasn't for the fourth quarter, the Bears would be historically bad. And that's kind of scary to think. And the problem is that Matt Nagy's not going to go anywhere, and you could fire him tomorrow, but you still got to deal with the rest of the season and just kind of hope it gets better. The Bears play the Minnesota Vikings next week. I'm trying to pull the lineup on that, but I think the Bears are probably not favored. Have you seen the line yet?
I haven't, but I'd be shocked if they're within 3.5 points.
And this is at Chicago, by the way.
Let's see. I'm
trying to pull it up right now. Yeah, it's I think they're underdogs. Which I mean, to Minnesota, go back 2-3 weeks ago, and Minnesota had just traded away one of their defensive guys.
It's only 2.5 points, actually.
That the Vikings are favored.
Yeah, Vikings are favored by 2.5.
But 2 or 3 weeks ago.
But that's at Chicago.
Yeah.
So realistically, you flip that, and it's 5.5 points if it's in Minnesota. So
it's and so and I'll tell you what's really killing the Bears the most is that they cannot run the ball. And that's not David Montgomery's fault. That's because they don't have an offensive line. And I don't know. I mean,
and Montgomery's in the concussion protocol, so
yeah. Well, actually pretty good.
If he doesn't get cleared by Sunday, get ready for Cordero Patterson, baby. Jet sweep, jet sweep, jet sweep.
Maybe it'll be Null, right? Null came in.
Lamar Miller better be healthy by then.
I know.
Yeah, I mean it's it's just so bad. That's maybe that'll change something. I don't know. I mean, I want to see them. I mean, Lamar Miller used to be he's a Pro Bowl running back. I mean, it's there's got to be something going on there. I mean, he can't be near. I know Nagy kept saying he's closer and closer. I don't trust anything Nagy says. And again,
it's kind of like Donald Trump. You just don't listen to anything he says.
Yeah, basically, or just go with the opposite. Just assume it's a lie of some sort. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. I don't feel good at all about this game, and we'll see what happens.
Kyle's input. I mean, I like this. I mean, if you would have told me at the beginning of the season, but given everything that we've seen, I'd take it.
And you know what? You know why I'd take it is because it guarantees somebody new is calling plays. It guarantees because Nagy Pagano sure as hell not going to be calling offensive plays. So he's going to actually use Bill Lazor with laser beams on their freaking heads.
For people on the podcast, we have a comment from Kyle that says Nagy fired after they dropped 4th straight to Vikings. Pagano named interim, beat Packers after bye. Book it. And so we're saying that, or at least I'm saying that I think that sounds like something that at this point I kind of would be okay with.
It's not unrealistic, although the beating the Packers thing I think is pretty unrealistic unless they have one of those games where Rodgers lays an egg. But yeah, I don't. And I will say this though, I'm really, really glad that the Packers didn't end up trading for Will Fuller, because if you would have had Devontae Adams on one side and Will Fuller on the other, that would be really like that would be tough. I mean, the Bears can match up fairly well with those guys, but I mean the Packers are a team where you have a legitimate kind of an offensive guru of a coach who is sort of willing to open up the playbook a little bit, and who also understands, like, I know he and Rodgers kind of butted heads a little bit there early on, Matt LaFleur, that is, but once they kind of got into more of a rhythm and got in sync with that stuff, and then, a guy like Rodgers, obviously, I don't want to compare, we shouldn't expect anywhere near that kind of production from either Foles or certainly Trubisky. He's hurt, doesn't matter anyway, from insert practice squad guy here. That's the other thing that scares me, is where their backups have to go. But the idea is similar in that you had a really experienced quarterback who had been in a similar system before, who kind of understood the makeup of it. And the thought was that this guy can come in and generally be able to run this offense. But that clearly has not
happened.
And with somebody like Rodgers, though, you have him to where he's able to make the plays, make the calls, and understand what needs to happen. I mean, he's an
Green Bay doesn't even need an offensive coordinator. Do they even have one?
I don't know if LaFleur, I assume he's their. I guess I should be more
de facto
smarter about this, but I'm pretty sure he runs the show in a similar fashion. But it's a far higher talent level, so I don't want to kind of get into too many direct comparisons. But in the sense that that Foles should, under normal circumstances, be able to be the one kind of calling the plays for the most part, and then you like that stuff should all be set up during the week. Those things should be not scripted.
And in the Bears' defense, they had the practice canceled. They had to close their facility last week. I mean, but everybody's dealing with the same thing here, so it's hard to kind of use that as defense.
Yeah.
When other teams are kind of dealing with the same type of stuff. At the end of the day, listen, Minnesota's defense is not good. They're ranked, I think, like 25th or something like that. I'm looking right here. Yeah, their defense is ranked 25th in the league. The Bears should be able to at least score some points, and I feel confident with the Bears defense coming in. I don't know what the weather forecast in Chicago is looking like for it's Monday, it's a whole week away, but I mean, it's just, we'll see what happens.
I think it's supposed to be it'll be in the 50s, high 50s, chance of rain, 40%. So cloudy, probably not bad.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. I mean, if the Bears lose, they're going to go into their bye week having lost 4 straight games. Perfect opportunity to fire Matt Nagy. So if they win, then obviously I don't think they're going to fire Nagy, but maybe they will. So who knows? We'll see what happens. And that's it for this week's episode of the Rant Live Chicago Bears webcast and podcast. Evan, I'll see you on the other side. Everybody else, thanks for joining us.
Sounds good. Catch you on the flip side.